Okay, good morning. This is Ron, Sunday morning. See what questions we have, or maybe pick up with yesterday. Uh, Yesterday we started off. Nick was talking about the solar flares and which we had discussed a couple of weeks ago, that they are continuing, and talking about the spiritual part of that. And we talked about the storms in general, what all that means, the connection to them, the energy that's out there. So we got into some other things off that discussion, but that's any questions at all about anything that was discussed on yesterday. We even talked a little bit about current events, but which we may get into a little bit more today. But any questions or comments about anything that may have gotten your attention last few days?
Good morning, Ron
Anyone?
family. This is Evelyn.
Hey, Evelyn.
Um, Hi. I was listening to the broadcast yesterday. I wasn't able to stay on long, but anyway, Audrey Pastor talked about oxygen in the water and the nitrate. Um, I used to watch SpongeBob with my grandkids,
Mm.
and SpongeBob is like they're underwater, right? A lot of people didn't know that. I didn't know that, but anyway. Are we underwater and don't realize it because the earth is full of water? Does that make sense? It's a certain percentage of water, and are we underwater and not realizing it because we create things that's outside of us? So I'm like wondering, is that the case with us? It was just a thought I had. That's my question.
Actually, I think that's a good question. Pastor, would you like to elaborate a bit for us, please?
Um, Good morning.
Good morning.
We are not underwater. We are spirit, and water itself is a representative in the physical or spirit itself. So the short answer to that is no, we're not underwater.
Thank you. Yeah, my mind went to the creation story, of course, separating the waters from the waters. Uh, and I was kind of thinking about that in my head, but thank you.
So a follow-up question with that is space not full of water? I mean, because
No,
isn't the air full of water? It has water in it. And let
it's
me
a
tell you why I
difference.
say that, because there was this guy that was working with the military, how he would change, he would get the air and turn it into water, drinking water. So that's why I was thinking about that too.
It's a difference in water and moisture. He takes the moisture out of the air, and when he takes the moisture out of the air, he ends up with water. It's simply like the fog in the air, right? When it's foggy, that's moisture, that's water in the air, but it's not in a state that you can drink it, you can absorb it. Um, we are we actually we are not water, we are not anything other than spirit, period. Everything like water, everything like the trees, anything else comes from us in terms of our coming from the essence of who we were created by, which means that we are we are everything that is rather came from who we are. Let me put it that way. So we're not it. It came from us. It's like the flower is not the seed. It came from the seed, even though a seed is a part of the flower. Does that make sense? Maybe
It does.
someone can explain it better than I at this moment.
But
That makes
I'm still, I need to think more on what you just said. And if I have a follow-up question, I'll ask it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and I appreciate Pastor's answers. I saw the last part of that with the flower very vividly, and that painted a picture for me. I think what the question does to me, I said, good question. I think as we learn and understand more, see more enlightenment on this journey that we're on, I think it invites us to explore more and to challenge us more. And that challenge is even to question things that we thought we knew, and to be students. There's nothing wrong with being students and having a desire and a willingness and an eagerness to learn and accept who and what we are. So, and where we are. So thank you. Appreciate the question. Anyone else? No one? I'll ask something. Pastor mentioned something on yesterday about the conviction of Donald Trump, and no one said anything about that. I think he had a couple things to say about it, but I was surprised that we didn't elaborate a little more. We didn't go into that a little bit more about what your thoughts are on that. Where do you see that? Where are you with that? And if it's no big deal to you, that's great. Let's talk about that part too. But what do you see in this? What's the landscape like to you?
Mr. Ron, I have a question regarding that.
Okay.
What does it say about society that believes a woman who's a porn star versus the person who's the former U.S. president? Because years ago, if you were a porn star, prostitute, anything that was considered diminishing, you automatically were a liar. And what does that say that they convicted him in spite of that?
Good question. Anyone care to?
Let someone else do it first.
Okay. Even if you don't know the answer, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, good morning, Ron. This is Jackie. My
Jackie.
thoughts are I know it's spiritual, but I just cannot, as far as just wrap my mind around. I know it's spiritual. I feel like that's my opinion, but I just can't explain it. That's where I am with it.
Okay. You feel indifferent about it, Jackie?
What was your question, Ron? I'm sorry.
Do you feel indifferent about it? Does it bring about a feeling or emotion one way or the other?
I feel that he was convicted, but I feel like it'll be overturned because of how society has became as the party. They think he's invincible, and he thinks he's invincible. And I don't know if this is publicity or what. It's almost like, wow, yeah, okay, he was convicted. That's how I'm feeling, because I couldn't believe that he would have been.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate your opinions on this.
But because he was, I'm thinking like, okay, what's the spiritual connotation behind it? That's where I am with that.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Ron, this is Teresa. I agree with Jackie. I'm still in disbelief that he did get convicted, but is it going to hold up? We've been going through this for a while now with him, but that's just my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate your honesty. Is there anyone else? Do you guys agree? Disagree? Do you see something else?
This is Vermel. I agree with Jackie and the young lady who just spoke, but I also feel like for America, we're starting to see that we do have two different justice systems. And I think we're going to see how people stand and feel about that. I think we're going to have a bit of chaos behind coming to understand that our system isn't just. That's my thought.
Okay. Thank you, Vanille. Was there someone else? If anyone may have just come on, what we are discussing is the conviction, the court convicted Donald Trump on all 34 counts, I think it was. Where are you with that? How do you feel about it? And do you all feel one way or the other? Does it make you angry? Does it bring about some feelings or emotions in you? What are your first thoughts on it when you saw that?
Yeah, good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone. This is
Morning,
George.
George. How are you?
My thoughts, Ron, and even yesterday when Pastor mentioned about someone who may have been, who was incarcerated and they're released, and how do we engage with them in terms of us being who we are. And I was in prison this week, visiting some inmates in reference to having the opportunity to share a little bit about, what we do in the diversion program. And, there was an inmate, who was aware of the situation, with Trump being guilty. But, he was just stating, or it was said that normally when someone is guilty, of a crime, normally if they, again, are found guilty and they, receive, I'm trying to think of the word right quick, I apologize. They're found guilty, then it's an automatic, situation where they are locked up if they have a felony. And so, it was like his thoughts, well, this, I have a felony, I was, committed, where I have to serve time. And in this situation here, you have someone else who, basically is in that situation again where they committed a felony, and, all kinds of options are being created in terms of him not having to serve in that same capacity. I think we understand it in the natural, but in the spiritual, it just made me really think about the system. It really makes me think about those who are incarcerated and the things that they experience and see. And it really kind of hit me, a little bit hard from a standpoint of not necessarily being in the Correction Institute for a period of time where I wasn't, I had the opportunity to be in that situation, but to actually visit one, and again, it's been a while, and just to see the conditions, Ron, and everybody, just to see, what's happening on the inside, it really made me think about the importance of appreciating our freedom. And for those inmates who will be released, hopefully, in a short period of time, in about 1 or 2 months, them being able to stay the course so that they can enjoy the freedom of, being able to be with their loved ones or be with a child. And again, my mind is just racing a little bit now because of my conversations with some of them. It's like, again, when my significant other was pregnant, 5 months, he didn't get a chance to see his child and have to, seeing it visually, but not being able to caress or to hold or to touch or to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just a lot that went through my mind. And again, my prayers are for humanity, but it just made me think about being incarcerated and what people are going through. And at the same time, Trump being found guilty and being that he has a felony, how some people are able to avoid that. So again, just thanks for letting me share those thoughts, man. But, I was just reflecting on that when you mentioned it, when Pastor mentioned yesterday about how do you treat someone or how do you, relate to it in the spiritual realm. I'm done. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, George. Appreciate all your input. And your thoughts. George bring up an interesting point. I guess I want to kind of rephrase the question a little bit. Do you think, because a couple of people mentioned that they were surprised he was convicted, do you think any of this has any bearing on where we are and what we're doing? We talked about recovering truth and what that, things were not going to be so pretty this year, but what do you think this has any bearing on that at all? Or is this something totally separate?
No, now that you mentioned it and rephrased the question, Ron, I believe it does.
Yeah, I do too. Anyone else?
Good morning, Ron. This is Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
I agree with everything that has been said this morning, but I think the thing that caught my attention the most from everything, I was surprised with the conviction, waiting to see what's going to happen with it. But what got my attention was the response of South Carolina with the Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham, McMaster's, and McMaster's going as far as to say it's a travesty of justice and outrage, but we'll show you when it's time to vote because we will put him back in. And I've listened to all the teachings that we've done and how we've said, as goes South Carolina, there goes the nation. And so I found it interesting that they were the most vocal of all. But I also believe in everything that we do. And I think they have to be the most vocal because we are unraveling in South Carolina everything at the seams. And I think they would be surprised to find that it may fit because they're already trying to circle the wagons and rally the troops and say this is never going to happen. But they don't realize it's beyond their control because there's a deeper source in what we are doing to bring about the change. And I remember when we were talking about the United States being the giant in the land, and I said the giant has to die. Well, the way the giants die in the land, in my opinion, is when you have had all of your power and influence and you lose all of that. It doesn't have to be a physical death, but just the fact that those things that you deem yourself to be, you lose all of that. And as a result of that, you're reduced to being just, quote unquote, a mere man. I think that is the trajectory that we are traveling on right now, because this, to me, is not just about a man being convicted. It's about the unraveling of a country so that we can become a spiritual nation. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on that this morning, so thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I want to say something before Pastor speaks. I'm just speaking to him now to hold off for a minute because I want to make sure we get everybody before he comes on. Anybody else? Along the lines of what is being said by everybody, and I really appreciate your honesty talking about your feelings and emotions about it, and your expectations that's greatly appreciated because I think all of that needs to be discussed. To add to that, sort of in line with what Kathy just said, is watching the news and reading the news and all the people who are loading their weapons, so to speak, or sort of like this is not, we're not going to stand for this. We're losing our rights, we're losing our America kind of thing, and this time we're going to fight. I'm with Kathy. I think all of this is necessary, and that's that's all a part of this, and I think it is all tied to where we are. And I'm going to ask Pastor to speak to all of that and kind of bring some clarity to it if he can, please.
I honestly think that this is a major event in the history of America and the world. When the people say, the people meaning those who Kathy talked about in South Carolina, say that it's a travesty of justice. All they're saying is that it's okay to convict a white man, but not to convict a racist white man. This system was not put in place to convict a racist white man. And when a white man is convicted, it cannot be a powerful white man who leads, who is the cheerleader for racism and greed. When we talk about the justice system itself, the justice system is often referred to as being two-tiered. One for white people and one for other people. There is no justice, there's only one justice system. And the justice system is for white people, period. There is no justice system for people of color, especially Africans. There's only injustice. When an African receives justice in the system, that is an anomaly. The normality of the system is to make sure that people are like Trump and Biden and his son are not convicted. Excuse me. As far as the role that it plays in this society, it is both political as well as spiritual. The politics, right, what we are experiencing are no different than nature, meaning that nature is a manifestation of power. And the adverse politics that are being experienced by white people now is a manifestation of power. The manifestation of the spiritual power to bring the globe, to bring everything into balance. The reason I do believe that the conviction took place is twofold. One is because we desired it to take place. Two is because the politicians wanted it to take place, because Donald is revealing too many of their racist secrets. And the efforts to keep those secrets under the undercover, those efforts now have come to an end. But not only that, we should not lose sight of the reality of two convictions. The courts convicted Donald Trump and the people convicted Joe Biden. The courts convicted Donald Trump because of what he engaged in with his business practices and the desire to overturn the election. But that was not because of purity in an election, because they allowed Bush to do it with the Supreme Court. it was because they were making an effort to stop Donald Trump from becoming president again, period. As far as the conviction of Biden is concerned, that conviction came as a result of people of color in particular and young white children. And I say children because they're still immature in thoughts, yet their eyes are open to what's actually happening. That conviction is when it comes to Gaza. Biden felt like he could support Netanyahu, which is actually supporting Donald Trump also, by way of extension. And he was tried in the court of opinion. I'm sorry, the public courts, and found guilty of his racist attitudes toward those who are in Gaza. So there is no difference between the conviction of Donald Trump and that of Biden. There's no difference in the racist tendencies of Donald Trump and Biden. It's simply that Biden's projections of racism are international, and you see the results of them on the international stage being played out, which means that he makes an effort to separate his racism from the shores of America, while Trump is overtly worldwide. And what I have experienced with this type of racism being exposed is the ignorance of Africans, the ignorance of some because they don't know any better, and the stupidity of others who should know better. The most troubling thing with me is that the Africans have made a decision that they are going to embrace, some of them anyway, what Trump is doing, and the others are supporting what Biden is doing. Those are the stupid ones who supporting what Biden is doing because they are very much aware of what's happening in Gaza, yet they support it anyway. So what am I saying? What does all of this mean? This means that the system that has been put in place by Europeans is being exposed in every way possible. Is also saying that the fall of European power is not going to only be reflected in what happens in America, it's also going to be reflected in what's happening worldwide. There is a court. The court of America got Trump. The court of righteousness got Biden and Trump at the same time. So I do not think that we should have any fears or concerns about what's coming, because I heard you say that you did not expect Trump to be convicted. The thing that gets me about it is most people did not expect him to be convicted because Bragg is an African DA, and no N-word, no, let me just say it, no nigga could convict Trump. That's what they felt. So what I'm saying now is that now that we've seen that happen, don't be afraid of it. What they have done is put us in a position where they're saying, if you don't elect Biden, you're going to get Trump. And if you don't elect Trump, you're going to get a civil war. Neither one of them concerns me, because the landscape is different than what it was during the period of the Civil War, but it's also different than what it was during the period of civil rights when people were being lynched, and when people were being shot down like dogs and arrested for no reasons at all. That landscape has shifted. So I don't anticipate that at all. Neither do I anticipate an election of Biden continuing the status quo, because I do not believe that he, even if he's elected, that he's going to survive a complete term. And my mind harkens back to something that Kathy said when Biden was elected, 2 years. That we would see a change, that he would only have 2 years. Suppose that that 2-year reference is speaking to this term itself. Suppose that what we will see is an election of Biden, and Biden being mentally incompetent and not able to continue a term, and an African woman being put into place who will stand in that position with guidance from other Africans who have a deep desire to bring about change in this earth. So all I guess I'm saying out of all the words that I've spoken is that don't fret about anything. Don't be afraid whether or not white men going to come approaching you with guns, that there's going to be random killings of African people, because that's not going to happen. Don't be concerned that we don't have a choice. We do have a choice, and we made our choice. Our choice has been to let the universe move in the direction it chooses. We have relinquished to the universe our free will, and we have said to the universe our desires are for harmony in the earth, and our desire is for that to come any way that the universe chooses for it to be. So whatever happens, we have already agreed to it by virtue of relinquishing our free will and our desires to the universe. The other thing is make sure that you are steadfast in what you believe in terms of holding on to who you are. Why? Because if you vacillate, it will cause you sleepless nights, and it will give you fearful moments in this earth. If you hold fast to what you believe, what you know the truth to be, then you will be heroic in the face of fear, because you know that nothing can defeat you. The things that we see with our eyes, hear with our ears, those things are designed by the confused energy to keep us in a state of fear. An example of that is the dogma that we were fed about religion itself is confused in nature. And it has kept us in a state of confusion. It has told us if you pray, then you're going to be delivered from slavery. You're going to be delivered from racism. Prayer has not delivered us from racism. What delivers us is a recognition. Even desire didn't do it, to be honest with you, because we desired all these things to change and nothing changed. The only thing that changed is the reality of the African being divine in its existence. When we began to embrace the reality of divinity of the African, when we began to embrace the androgynous divinity that brought everything into existence, it is at that time that our desires began to be fulfilled. And because desires cannot be fulfilled unless those desires are based upon truth. And the truth that we base them upon is that we are divine in nature. We were brought into this earth in terms of, into the earth rather, for the express purpose of being the source of divinity in the earth. The other week when I talked about the feminine aspects of the feminine nature of God, there was some who recoiled from that. And I spoke concerning the DNA and the mitochondrial DNA. There are two types of DNA. There's the DNA that's called the DNA that you receive from your parent, and there's the DNA that you receive that are your parents. There's the DNA your parents give you, and then there's the DNA that you give to your children. Mitochondrial DNA is the DNA you give to your children. And mitochondrial DNA is the DNA that the African woman carries for every person on the face of the earth, which means that mitochondrial DNA is the DNA of every the mother carries. So the mother of the earth carries all the mitochondrial DNA. So that tells me that the feminine, the African woman represents the divine aspects of the supreme creator. And in the mitochondrial DNA, the creator has said in no uncertain terms that you are an extension of me. And the African, being an extension of the creator, has recognized itself and who it is in this earth. So now the desires of the African are coming to fruition now. And because they are coming to fruition, we see a conviction of Trump. We see a conviction of Biden. We see that they've been weighed in the balance, and we see that they have been found wanted. We see the conviction of a nation. We see the conviction of European attitudes, period. We see all of these convictions, and now it is time for the punishment. And the punishment is not a death. The punishment is not an imprisonment. The punishment is a transformation from the desires of their hearts to be greedy and evil and racist. The punishment for them is righteousness for all. A man who is evil and basks in his evilness and loves the power that evilness gives him and that sense of superiority, the greatest punishment for him is for him to lose it all, as Kathy alluded to a few moments ago. I'm done. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. Any questions about what Pastor said? What do you feel about what he said? What you heard? Nobody?
Yeah, Ron, I just like to say that, you know, in terms of what Pastor mentioned, if we look at, as we have talked about in the past, in terms of the principles of Maya, it talks about reciprocity.
Yeah.
And that, you know, what comes around goes around. And I think that, again, us being able to, you know, realize that, you know, that's, you know, part of every aspect of creation, where that's what I see in terms of what Pastor said. That's what comes to my mind in terms of that principle. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, George. Great observation. Anyone else?
Ron, I have a question. And this is for George, or anybody. Do you think those guys who are in prison with the felony will be released? That's my question.
Yeah, you know what? I believe they will because of their desire. And I think that, you know, when we have an opportunity just to be in the presence of others and give them that enlightenment, you know, where they can have a sense of value in terms of what's important. Evelyn, you know, it's not about the money. It's not about, you know, the ego, but it's about what you feel that gives you the purpose for living. And if your child is important to you, if your family is important to you, you know, being able to receive that person with loving kindness and being able to put them on that right path where there's positive energy flowing and connecting, I truly believe that, you know, they will be released, but it's like staying the course of knowing who you are and what you need to do if that resonates with you, Evelyn. I'm done.
So I have a concern also about the youth, like the young Black boys. It's like every time you look at the news, just to check the status of what's going on, you see all these Black young boys going to jail. I mean, it hurts. It really do, just to see the fact that they're killing each other. They don't talk. They don't sit down or whatever, do like my brothers used to do. Just sit and talk. Once you said what you had to say, you were gone. Everybody going about their business. But now they want to unlive you.
Yeah,
Yes.
well,
Let me tell you
you
why.
know,
Go ahead, George. I'll deal with it in a moment.
yeah, no,
There's a
I was
reason.
just going to say, Evelyn, I just want to say that I truly believe and I'm sensing the change in the atmosphere. And I don't want to say just in Philadelphia, but I believe in the universe. And there's opportunities now where there's young adults, there's what we call the OGs, and there's people out there on the ground, on the foot ground, that's now interceding. And I shared with Pastor and with Kathy that there's people that have reached out to me in a way that how do we sit at the table and have that dialogue with them in a way that they can be transformed by the renewing of their mind, and not so much in terms of what the system is dictating or saying, but giving them the hope to know that if they can, appreciate, the elders wanting to reach out to them and having a sense of belonging and believing and committing to that unity, the manifestation is starting to happen. And it may not be as quick as we want, but I know that that's the blessing of what I'm experiencing in our fellowship. And now the action to be able to be where the Creator is placing us to share our energy and our light. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
In reference to what George is talking about, what George is talking about, what I see it is a spiritual manifestation. A physical manifestation of spiritual power. What do I mean by that? Just like the indoctrination of evilness and a gang mentality was instilled into African men in particular, from white men in particular. That indoctrination is now being undone. What am I saying to you? I'm saying to you that crack cocaine was introduced into the African community by white folks, bottom line, for the express purpose of the destruction of the African. The idea and concept of gangster and gang activity was also introduced into the African community by white men for the express purpose of destruction of the male seed. The idea of felony was introduced into the African community for the express purpose of incarcerating and keeping African men from voting. And the idea of Bill Clinton's 3 Strikes program was to remove African men from the community. Why? Because they remove them at age 15. They give them a felony charge. And by the time they are out of prison, they cannot find employment. So they go right back to jail. And by the time they're out this time, they are beyond the age where people normally begin a family. And the only thing that the family that they know is one of criminality. And that is being undone now. I see that in what George is talking about. Our concern is one thing, our fear is another. If something hurts us, we feel that we can't change it. If we see something that concerns us, we know that we can change it. Sometimes pain freezes us, concern activates us. So I am saying that when we see things, as Evelyn described, let's be more concerned about whether or not we have addressed it, as opposed to being hurt to the point where we don't know what to do about it, because we do know. We don't. Our desires has opened a door that George has walked in, what happened with George in regards to what he's talking about. This is no different than when the student is ready, this teacher will appear. When it's time to unravel the indoctrination, the one who's capable of doing it will appear. And that's the appearance that he has put in. And we have to hold on to that because we are at a critical juncture now. We cannot afford at any point in our journey, especially now, to to have any thoughts of what ifs, or I don't see a way out of this. These are the thoughts that have kept us in this place all of this time. We have to continuously remind each other, you are the solution to the problem, or you are the problem. It doesn't matter where the problem emanates. If we don't do something about it, then we are feeding the problem. And the doing something about it is actually truly embracing who we are. And the energy that's being constantly pumped into this earth atmosphere from the sun is giving us not only the wherewithal to do it, it's giving us not only the stamina to do it, but it's giving us the wisdom as to how to do it. And that wisdom I hear expressed from the direction that George is being guided in Philadelphia. Now, I do not believe that this is just endemic to Philadelphia. I believe that Philadelphia is a microcosm, that Philadelphia is a picture of what is throughout the country. Why do I say that? Because even though you might not see it in the state of South Carolina, it doesn't mean it's not here. It has to germinate. It has to take effect first. And when things begin to germinate and take effect, then you begin to see the growth of them. I do believe that it is in Philadelphia because everything that we are having to cope with now started in Philadelphia. The nation, this country rather, started in Philadelphia. The racist constitution, the racist Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, all of these things had their emanation in Philadelphia, the genesis in Philadelphia, and it spread it throughout. And South Carolina became the bedrock for the racism because of the number of prisoners and the attitude of the prisoners who populated South Carolina after having been or sent from England, from the dungeons of the prisons to populate this state and other states along the coast, the East Coast. So all of these things are working together for the advantage of humanity globally. I would suggest very strongly that when we see things with our eyes and hear the things with our ears that are happening, that we recognize that there are opportunities and they're not disasters, that we see them as a sign to us as to what to focus on, as opposed to being something to recoil from and not know how to deal with it. Because by virtue of us being who we are, there is absolutely nothing on the face of the earth that we cannot handle. Think about it this way: if every group of people on the earth is in the mitochondrial DNA of the African woman, then that means that every person on the face of the earth is a child of the African woman. And no mother wants her child to be destroyed. No man wants his seed to be destroyed. So what happens? You do everything you can to bring your child to a place of discipline so that they can walk the journey of righteousness instead of travel the depth of the valley of discontentment, anger, and brutality. So I'm saying that Evelyn, when you see that, remember who you are. Within your mitochondrial DNA is every group of people on the face of the earth. They are your children, and your children can always be brought back to a place of balance because you are the mother of that child. Everyone on this phone, you might not want to admit it, but you know for a reality that children are the way children are reared is chiefly dependent upon their relationship with their mother because she spends more time with them than anyone else does. If we can see that spiritually, relate that spiritually, then we will be able to see that it is the strength of the change in that in any child is the femininity. Ron mentioned that earlier. I think it was yesterday or something about femininity softens us. That doesn't mean it makes you gay. Because if you're gay, you're born that way. That's not what we're talking about at all. Femininity gives you opportunity to see what's in your heart. And if something is in your heart that should not be there, it shows you how to purge it. It is the wisdom that shows you how to become what you were created to be. It is the wisdom that encourages you to get beyond the indoctrination and purge yourself of it so you can be who you were created to be. I was talking to an OG yesterday, day before yesterday rather, and one of the things that we talked about was his change. And I said to him that, have you ever thought about that you needed to go to prison? You needed to go to prison. You were reared in a home that was totally different. You had all the advantages, but you chose the road that you traveled. Suppose that road was chosen for you, because now you are one man who went to prison, out of prison, and now you are changing the hearts of hundreds of men, of boys, keeping them from doing what you did. Suppose that you had to do that in order to be that OG, so you could bring this to fruition. That's how I rather see the cup half full than half empty. I'm done. Thank you, and I hope it helps.
It did, Pastor Jay. So I got one more thing to ask. George and other people who are helping the youth or whatever, those who are incarcerated, is that the form of activation that we talked about, the melanin being activated by the SUN?
It is that, but guess what else? Every one of us is incarcerated. Our bars are invisible, which makes our bars harder to be freed from. We think we got it going on. We think that we're free. We think that we're okay. We're the elephant with the thread around his leg. We have been conditioned to accept incarceration by virtue of looking at those who've been physically incarcerated. We think that we are not, because we're not where they were. Does that make sense?
Oh my God, yes. That hit hard. Yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
Good discussion. Anyone else? Let me say this. Right now, I feel that this is a good place to stop, to pause, and let's reflect on what we've discussed. But I want to ask a question before I do something here. When we first started asking questions in the beginning, I felt some apprehension and a little concern with some of the answers. And that's why I kept saying I appreciate your honesty where you are. Do you feel a bit more comfort now? Do you feel better? We've talked about what I loved was the free will. We've relinquished our free will. We're at the mercy of the universe, not the mercy of man, at the universe. We've given ourselves to the universe, and what happens, and we will live with it. We are who we are. We don't forget that. We keep our focus on who we are. We've talked, several people have talked about what has happened is right in line with what needs to happen. Things are being revealed. We're talking about light and darkness. We talked about feminine energy. And feminine energy talks about your intuitiveness and what you feel, what you think. Remember who you are. This may be very political, but it is all spiritual. All of it is spiritual. And we right in the middle of that. So I'm trying to remember in my mind everything that was said, and I can, of course. I'm not good at that part at all. But how do you feel about what was said? Do you feel a little better? Do you recognize yourself in everything that was said in this hour? You don't have to explain, just a yes or no or help. If you still feel a bit uncomfortable, we can talk about that too. How do you
This is
feel?
Carmel.
What's more?
I don't feel uncomfortable. When Sage said what he said and the further explanation, I feel all I can think of is being wrapped in a cocoon. I feel assured. But
Okay.
there's a part of me that feels like this sadness for even Trump, just the world and in the as we just described, the bars we can't see. I feel this kind of deep sadness. And I wonder if that is that just as bad as being fearful? I'm not sure I'm asking that question right, but is it like trying to ride? Is it trying to straddle two sides? That's kind of what I wonder about that sadness. I'm just not familiar with that.
Why are you sad?
I'm sad because I think the easiest way for me to put it is I want to say, does not Donald Trump and those that are in power realize how, even if they don't see themselves being harmful to us, don't they see us being humanity? Don't they see they're being harmful to themselves? I don't know how else to ask it.
That is American naivety. That is African naivety. When we think that people who have no sense of divinity in them, when we think that people who has no regard for anything that they can't monetize, then we are being naive. When we think that they care about humanity, they care absolutely about nothing. We are talking about barbarians who are parading as educated people. We are talking about barbarians who have convinced us that they are intellectuals. We are talking about barbarians who have convinced us that they have a quote unquote Christian heart. We are talking about barbarians who have never brought anything to this earth except destruction. So why would they have anything within them that makes them feel bad about what they do, or even recognize those who enrich them as being humans, when all their lives they have felt and been taught that those who have enriched them are animals? And to this day, though, even those who are one with, who are in the midst of us, who say that they see the racism, they even reference us as being animals. So that is so deeply ingrained in them, until the change is never going to come from a church pew or pulpit. Neither is it going to come from a classroom or a school book. It's only going to come from the energy in the atmosphere. And that energy in the environment must be overwhelmingly righteousness. And the overwhelmingly righteousness, the source of it is the African. And the only way that source, the African source, can be what it's supposed to be in terms of inundating this spiritual environment with righteousness is for it to realize who it is and stop playing games with itself. Stop acting like Europeans at home and getting on this phone acting like an African. Be who you are all the time, or be nothing at all, because you will be exposed for who you really are. So what am I saying to you? I am saying to you, please, by all means, do not get caught up in naivete, thinking that those who are being enriched by their evilness cares one iota about anyone who is poised to interfere with them. I hope that helps.
Camille, does that help?
I hear what Sage is saying. What comes to mind as I'm thinking about it, and maybe I need to sit in it more. If we are all from the African woman, where did their, for lack of a better word, seed of compassion go? Like, is it so buried so deep?
It's all about
I don't
choices.
know.
It's all about choices. I'm going to introduce this, and then we can talk about it later.
Okay.
Every one of us was brought into this earth with free will. And if you notice, if the compassion and the spirituality is the African, most centered in the African, the further away you get from the African, the less it is in you. And you have a choice to make. And the choice that you have to make is a choice between recognizing the choice between recognizing that you are to treat humanity with loving kindness or not, whether European chose not to. And as a result of that, you can see from the first entrance into Kemet, into the kingdom of the Kushites, there was no efforts to be peaceful. It was all efforts to take and to destroy. And to this day, that attitude is the same. This seed, yes, it came from the African, but it came from the African with the same thing in the African. You have a choice. You can be functional or dysfunctional, what we call the tree of life or the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They had the same opportunity and chose not to prioritize that in their lives. And because they chose not to prioritize that, they became the substance that we work with in order to bring this earth realm to a place of as above, so is below, meaning that the dysfunctionality that is represented in the mindset of the European must be brought to a state of functionality. And the only one who can bring it to that state is the African. And in doing so, and when the African does so, then we will have balance, we will have harmony in the earth. But as long as we sit on our hands and expect the barbarians to pass a law that's going to make us equal, the longer we remain incarcerated, the longer we remain duplicit, the longer we remain evil within ourselves, the longer we play game, we play what we call well, back in the day, they called white folk games. We play European games with our mindsets, and we do not treat each other the way that we are supposed to treat them. We don't even treat people the way we treat ourselves. We are bad to ourselves by virtue of treating others bad, and that in itself is not a African derivation. However, if the African makes a choice that it's going to follow the route of being barbarian, then that's the choice that the African makes. Barbarian is not necessarily someone who actually chops off the head. The barbarian also the ones who watch it being chopped off and does nothing about it. The barbarian is also the one who supports it by virtue of being supportive of a system that allows it to happen. I certainly hope that helps everyone on this phone. Thank you.
It did. Thank you.
I have something I like to add to that. I hope this didn't take away from what Pastor said. Pastor, you help me if I do. If Israel had been following God and loving each other and treating each other the way they needed to, would there have been a reason to take them out? Would there have been a reason for Babylon? So,
well, let's back up to that, please. Let's back up to that. First of all, the whole idea of Israel going into Babylon is not real at all. There is no historical record of Israel ever going to Babylon. That is really a story that speaks to the reality of the Europeans going into Kemet, and Kemet being destroyed by the Europeans, and because there are those who were spiritually astute, who was in league with the Europeans, who went into Babylon and went into Kemet and destroyed it. And as a result of that, the African was carried away into Rome and Greece. The African was carried away into Europe, meaning that the African mindset shifted, and it was overcome by the mindset of the Europeans. That is the representation of a Babylon. So it was done not because the African could not have done anything about it. It was done because he didn't do anything about it. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes. Is there anything else? Questions or comments?
Well, I hope you see what I'm talking about, because this is important that this is important that we see that. There are so many stories involved in that, right? There's so many stories involved in the scriptures that were reverse engineered to make it look like it was the Israelites or the Hebrews. To be quite honest with you, there is no history at all of Hebraic enslavement or the enslavement of quote unquote Israel. There's no history of that at all. There are only allusions to it. And when we look at the allusions to it, we have to look into history to see the origin of those illusions. Because every time we talk about or mention Israel, the first thing comes to mind is the Holy Land. That is not the Holy Land. If you want to call any land separated for the purpose of spiritual growth or spiritual teachings in the earth, it would be Kemet. It will not be the land that's occupied by the Romanians that's called Israel. It has never been the Holy Land. And the people who inhabit that land, even the Palestinians who inhabited before the British removed them for the purpose of putting the Eastern Europeans in there, even they are not endemic to that land. They were invaders as well. They are no different than the invaders who are currently occupying Kemet or Egypt. They are no different than the invaders who are currently occupying Saudi Arabia, Yemen, the invaders who occupy Qatar, Qatar, all of these are invaders. So when we look at that, we have to look at it through the historical / spiritual eyes. And when we do that, we see something differently than what the scripture has taught us. Thank you.
Okay. Before we get off the line, though, I just want to make sure everybody's okay, based on our discussion today, as far as anybody still feeling a bit uncomfortable as to what we're seeing. Is there anybody want to speak to that? Or are you okay? And we don't have to address it at all if you don't want to.
Ron,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't necessarily want to speak to that because I'm fine. I trust what we teach.
Yes.
But I'm just curious to know if the young lady who started the whole discussion from the beginning about the porn star versus the politician, is she okay? Because we never went back to her to see if that answered her question.
You're right. Thank you.
We never answered it, Catherine. Think about it.
That's why I asked.
Right, because the porn star, I did not get to that when I was when Ron asked me to speak to it. The society is changing by virtue of this porn star being believed and embraced. The society is beginning to see people for who they are, as opposed to judging her by the work that she did. What they fail to they always called her porn star, but they never talked about that she is an extremely intelligent lady. She graduated at the top of her class out of high school. She is the work that she chose is the work that she chose. We have a tendency to label people not because of our desires to do that. We have been taught to do that. Christianity has taught us to label anybody who does not fit the mold that we have made for Christianity has made for them. And the thing that gets me the most about it is she is labeled as a porn star, and that's the work she chose. No one should judge her by that at all. However, the most despicable, nasty, evil, barbaric, ignorant, dumb, uneducated being on earth is Donald Trump. He is far worse than anything that anybody could ever be if you want to look at it from a human standpoint and a societal standpoint. The society at one time would never have accepted anything that she had to say because they would have deemed her as being a whore and him being a rich man who can't do any wrong. And look at the church that has embraced him. And if the Christianity has embraced him, everything I said about him, that's what the church is. And everything that I have said in terms of our being, our change rather, and seeing people as being human and seeing them for who they were created to be as opposed to who they are, then that's what she represents. Does that help you, Myra?
It does, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Kathy?
For the question, Kathy.
Oh, I was fine. I just didn't want Myra's question to not be answered.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Miss Kathy.
You're welcome, Myra.
All right. Is there anything else to grab our attention? This may
Ron,
yes, ma'am.
this is Linda. I was listening to an article when, Trump was convicted. And his son, I think it was Eric, I don't know which one it was, he was on Fox News. And he was talking about how injustice it was for how they did his father. And in other words, he said that a white man should never have been convicted. And I mean, you've always know that this is how they think. But when he spoke it out loud, that, this is a white man and you convicted this man, it just spoke volume to me that all of the layers are being peeled away and everything is being exposed. And he didn't even realize what he said, but he said it out loud.
Yeah.
And that was just a comment that I had.
Thank you, Lynn. I like that. It's just simply saying that stuff like that come out when you're desperate, That's desperation. And if Eric, if Eric Trump was a man of color, no one would get within 10 feet of him because Eric Trump is not even liked by his daddy because his daddy feels like he's stupid. Literally, his daddy feels like he's stupid. And he only projects him because he's a Trump. Now, and I don't want to really get into the things that are going through my head in relationship to how he would be treated if he was a man of color, because, well, I'm just gonna say it. White men would call him retarded. They will have nothing to do with him, period, because of that. Not realizing that there is no such thing as, not realizing that the idea of somebody being retarded is an insult. that's what Eric would be to them. And then so, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just was thinking, how is this win on Trump? All of this. He's looking tired to me. And I just wondered, how does he feel with this conviction? What is he thinking? What are his thoughts?
How does stress weigh on you? When something happens out of the ordinary that seems that it's going to crush you, how do you feel? Do you sleep at night? Is it difficult for you to sleep at night? Do you feel tinges of anger throughout the day? Do you ask yourself, what can you do to change it? What did I do wrong? That's what you do. That's what normal people do. People like Trump, you can hear it in his so-called press conferences. What do you hear? People like Trump get angry and they want to destroy the people who convicted them. They literally want to kill folks, to remove them from power and to seek revenge. So a man full of revenge is a man who has sleepless nights. A man who is full of revenge is a person who tries to find ways to make things happen to make things happen in his favor without regard to how they hurt anyone else. So right now, I would surmise that Trump is scheming, is trying to find ways to get his people in the street to be destructive to other people, or is scheming to find the identities of all of those who are jurors and threaten them and do bodily harm to them. That what I would surmise about him because of previous actions that he has encouraged and taken. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. But it also just raises a brow. Why?
Because he's a reprobate. Let's move beyond the human Donald Trump. Let's move beyond what Donald Trump thinks and what Donald Trump is. That is America. What Donald Trump feels about revenge is what America is about. America is one of the most vengeful nations on earth. Look at what they have done. Netanyahu is seeking revenge against the Palestinians, and America is supplying him with bombs to kill women and children. That's barbaric. That's why, baby. We cannot understand the nature of what makes you do that without doing that ourselves. That's not who we are. So you will never know totally what he feels. You will never know totally what it feels like to seek that type of revenge, because that's not who you are. And the whys of it, you don't want the answers to. What we desire is for it not to exist at all. So rather than using our energy to look at the whys of it, let's utilize our energy to change it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
And just as an observation, both of them look tired. That was something I noticed too. The same with Biden. They both look exhausted. And again, that's no coincidence.
Even this is heavy.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything else? I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, good discussion, y'all. We'll ponder this and see if we have any more questions in line tomorrow. I hope you have a good day and look forward to seeing you 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, okay? Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Ron, today the
Yes, sir.
first Sunday. Today the first Sunday.
It is, isn't it?
3 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, guys. See the teachers at 3, okay? Bye-bye.
Okay. All right.
Take care,
Thank
Sarah.
you. Thank you, everybody.